Warning: the following video contains explicit language, which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Outrage, complete outrage, where China is poisoning America's children, poisoning our teenagers, poisoning our young people. How long are you going to let this go on?
Congresswoman, let me assure you that we're not letting it go on. We are fighting this.
No, I reclaim my time. You're a liar. You are letting this go on, and the numbers.
Well,
no, obviously.
Actually, I want you to take the words of the speaker down.
So in making a ruling on this, it's pretty clear that the rules state you can't impugn someone's character. Identifying or calling someone a liar is unacceptable in this committee. And I make the ruling that we strike those words.
Sorry, just a point of order, it's a legitimate question.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you move to take the words down or to strike them, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, sorry, I just stepped in.
Take them down.
So
That's what we did.
Yeah.
my understanding is if words are taken down, that means that the member can no longer speak in whatever the proceeding is that those words were said.
Personal inquiry, point of personal inquiry.
There's no such thing.
Stand by just a second. House, when we strike, it does terminate the time of the individual who is speaking. So the gentlelady is no longer recognized. The chair now recognizes Mr. Ivey, I believe.
Can I make a point of inquiry, Mr. Chairman?
You can.
So the ruling was that because she used the word liar, that was taken down, which I agree with.
Yes.
But accusing
a statement of fact is very similar to the posters that Mr.
There's no statement of fact.
There's no statement of fact.
Bullshit.
There's no
statement of
factual
fact.
basis for the statement.
We're not here to debate this, okay? And the ruling was made by the chair that these previous words were not against the rules of Clause 1 and Clause 4 of Rule 17. But to tell someone that they are a liar it's pretty clear in the rules.
Slander is clearly covered by the rule.
Are you ready?
Hey, welcome everybody. This is Jeff. Welcome. I hope everybody is having a great weekend. It's been nice here last couple of days. And the grass is getting pretty thick out there, so they're going to have to start mowing here pretty soon, probably Monday or Tuesday. But it doesn't take long. Once we start getting a little bit of rain, the grass starts coming out of the ground like you wouldn't believe, okay? So they're going to have to come over here soon and mow. I want to discuss a couple of things here about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Crazy bitch. Okay, yeah. She was at a hearing a couple days ago, and while the Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was, talking, she jumps in there and calls him a fucking liar. Okay, which, under these rules, you're not supposed to do that. Okay, you can't call somebody a liar at these hearings. Okay. And so she had a fit, and she said, well, Democrat Representative Eric Swalwell had a sexual relationship with a Chinese spy. I mean, that she accused him of that. Okay, totally. You know, it's like, what the hell does that got to do with the price of? You know, it's crazy. She just has this discussion had absolutely nothing to do about, you know, anything to do with that, and she throws this out there, okay, which everybody knows is like, what the fuck are you talking about? Okay, she throws this out there, calls him a liar, and they had to pound the gavel and say, look, enough, okay, Marjorie, this is not one of your goddamn rallies outside, you know, in front of McDonald's, okay? You can't come in here and start throwing around these gossip, you know, conspiracy theory shit, you know, in a hearing like this, okay? This is about Homeland Security. You're on the committee for that, and this is what you bring to the committee is this bullshit? You know, who the hell are you? You know, so people, you know, and even the Republicans were like kind of annoyed with her, what she did. Okay, now here's an article here written about this from The Independent, written by Andrew Feinberg. Okay, it says that Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene on Wednesday was blocked from further participation in a House Homeland Security Committee hearing after she broke House rules by calling Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas as a liar, while questioning him on the Biden administration's border policies. Ms. Greene, a conspiracy theorist, or I would like to say a nut, who was assigned to the prestigious committee after supporting California's Kevin McCarthy in his bid to become House Speaker, began her allotted 5 minutes by slandering Democrat Representative Eric Swalwell and accusing him of having had, quote, a sexual relationship with a Chinese spy, unquote. Mr. Swalwell cooperated in an FBI probe which led to the alleged spy, Christine Fang, leaving the U.S. for China, but there is no evidence that he had any sort of sexual relationship with her. New York Democrat Daniel Goldman immediately offered a motion to have her words, quote unquote, taken down, which would strike them from the official hearing record and bar her from speaking any further. The committee's GOP majority voted to table the motion, and Ms. Greene was permitted to resume speaking. But at that point, she laid into Mr. Mayorkas with a series of accusations about his purported responsibility for fentanyl overdoses among American youth. After she asked him, quote unquote, how long he would, quote, continue this outrage, unquote, the former prosecutor turned cabinet secretary attempted to defend his department's performance. He told Ms. Greene that he could, quote unquote, assure her that the department is, quote, not letting it go on, unquote, and is, quote unquote, fighting the trafficking. But before he could finish, Ms. Greene interjected again, shouting at the top of her lungs, quote, you are a liar. You are letting this go on, and the numbers prove it. You can't lie about the fact, Secretary Mayorkas. While you live in denial and sit over there with this attitude that you're doing everything right, you are killing Americans with your policies, unquote, she said. A moment later, Mississippi Representative Benny Thompson, the committee's ranking Democrat, asked for her words to be, quote unquote, taken down because they violated House rules of decorum. Mr. Thompson, who has served on the committee since it was created, said the panel has, quote, a history of being bipartisan committee that work on solutions, unquote. Quote, we can disagree, but we've gotten to the point of the language that we're using is not the kind of language that historically we use as members of this committee, unquote. He said, quote, there's a way that we are to conduct ourselves, and what I'm hearing is not how a majority of this committee conducts business, and we can do better, unquote. When the panel's chairman, Tennessee Republican Mark Green, asked if Miss Greene would withdraw her statement, she refused. No surprise there. He immediately ruled that she'd violated the rules and ordered the words stricken from the record. Quote, it's pretty clear that the rules state you can't impugn someone's character. Identifying or calling someone a liar is unacceptable in this committee, and I make the ruling that we strike those words, unquote, he said. He added that Ms. Greene was, quote, no longer recognized, unquote, meaning she could not finish her questioning of Mr. Mayorkas. Under House rules, she would be barred from any subsequent rounds of questioning during the Wednesday hearing. That's it. So what is she there for? She's gaslighting, okay? She's trying to turn a committee hearing into a circus to get attention because there were cameras in there, okay? There were cameras in there, and she wants to be the center of attention. I said this way back in a previous video. That's what she's all about. You know, everybody look at me. Look at what I'm doing. Look what I'm saying. You know, Trump, that's Trump's tactic. She learned that from him, obviously, or maybe she knew that all along. I don't know. But this is what she does. She wants all the fucking attention. And what does she bring for attention? Mudslinging. I remember how Americans used to get pissed about that during debates for the presidency. How the candidates would just sling mud at each other and never talk about the issues at hand, okay? Why anybody would think that she is doing her job when we know that Americans are really, you know, unhappy with that. I don't see why anyone gives her any credence. I really don't. You know, and it's obvious that Republicans are getting, you know, kind of sick of her pushing the envelope, as it were, in a lot of cases, because she destroys their credibility as a party by opening her mouth and saying what she says. The Republicans want to be looked at as a legitimate party these days, but it's very hard to do that when it's filled with lunatics like Marjorie Taylor Greene and you know, DeSantis and all these other freaks that are out there representing that party. They can't possibly argue that they are for America anymore when they're talking like this. Okay, because every time they say it, they're cut down by their own members. So I feel like that the Republican Party would probably like nothing more than to either get her off of that committee or sideline her somehow to shut her up. So that way, you know, the better voices in their party, if there are such things, can actually be heard, because they're hogging the spotlight. You know, the lunatics are hogging the spotlight all the time. And the press are always focused on them. And I'm sure that makes the others feel kind of miserable for those people who are Republican but want to be legitimately listened to as, you know, somewhat calm. you know what I'm saying? But it's very hard to believe that they can be. And I think that, you know, what's happened here is another example of a radical right Trumplican throwing her fat around again, throwing her conspiracy shit around again, okay? And that being the only source of information and data that she grasps with. I mean, she comes to this hearing carrying all the wrong things. She's got nothing to offer for this particular discussion. So she brings in accusations, and she brings in mud, and she brings in eggs and tomatoes and all the other fucking things to throw at the guy sitting at the chair. Nothing about what they're really talking about. And that's another reason why they had to take the words down. They don't have a place in the whole discussion. Okay? It's like having a meeting about a computer and you introduce somebody from McDonald's in there, and he's talking about how you cook a filet. Okay? You know, what the fuck is that got to do with everything else? You know, so I'm like really baffled at how these people can really tolerate, you know, her at any given day. Obviously, she was either drunk or damn near fully drunk, okay, during this committee, because when you look at her in the video, her face is as red as a beet, and it wasn't from anger because she hadn't even started in yet, okay, but her skin was all red, and I've seen drunk people before, okay, and when they're drunk, really drunk, you know, their eyes get bloodshot and their skin looks red. Okay, she looked, you know, red. So obviously she probably, you know, had been drinking a little bit before she got in there. So maybe that loosened her mouth up a bit more than it should have. Okay, but somebody had to put their foot down, and I dare say that if she kept going even after being censured, they probably would have thrown her out of the fucking hearing room. Period. Okay, which I would have loved to have seen that happen, but apparently, you know, she knew enough to shut up after that and just let the thing go forward. She can say what she wants out in public to her supporters. Okay, she could say what the hell she wants. Nobody's ever going to believe anything she says anyway. But if she wants to go out and echo, oh, how he lied, you know, okay, fine, but don't do it inside the actual hearing. Okay, there's rules in there. If she didn't realize that, she does now. But there's rules about how we conduct ourselves at things like this, so that way we can calmly come to some kind of discussion to fix an issue. Okay, you can't fix issues if you come to the thing drunk and shouting and screaming and hurling accusations. Nothing ever gets solved when you do that. And ultimately, I think that's what the GOP wants. They want nothing solved, because everything they do is about divisive measures. Everything they do is to pit people against people in this country. That's all they do. They're not honest about a damn thing they tell you. Okay, it might sound good on paper to some people, but at the end of the day, what they take on paper doesn't materialize as innocent as it sounded. Okay, it becomes something completely horrible. All right, and that's what she brings to this. Now, as if that wasn't enough, yesterday she went out and made a claim that murder is already legal. Okay, this is from OK Magazine, written by Aaron Johnson, entitled "Marjorie Taylor Greene Slammed Following Bizarre Claims That Murder is Already Legal. This lady is broken." Critics dragged Marjorie Taylor Greene after the Georgia representative went on a bizarre claim that, quote, murder is already legal, quote unquote, in the United States, and that stricter gun control laws would only result in more mass shootings. On an episode of her podcast, MTG Battleground, what else would they call it, the controversial politician addressed several recent tragic shootings, including an incident in Texas where 2 cheerleaders were shot after mistaking the wrong vehicle in a parking lot for their own. Jesus. Quote, "But as the details emerged from that shooting, it was really criminals and thugs that did the shooting. And the killing this past weekend in Alabama, just like most mass shootings really are," unquote, Greene argued, before strangely insisting that, quote, murder is already legal in America, unquote. We have enough, quote, "we have enough laws on guns. We have enough laws on murder," unquote, she insisted to her fans. Quote, "But no matter how many more laws that we make in America, you will never stop a person who is intent on killing other people," unquote. Quote, "They don't have to have a gun to do it. They murder people with knives, with their fists, with rocks, with cars," unquote, the 48-year-old continued. Quote, "They can make homemade bombs. They can find a way to kill people if that's what they want to do," unquote. The far-right conservatives said that people who commit these types of crimes already have, quote, murder in their hearts, unquote, and that if Democrats find a way to, quote, destroy the Second Amendment, unquote, it will only lead to an increase, quote, increase in school shootings, unquote, and mass murder, unquote. Following her explosive comments, critics flocked to social media to mock Greene, with some going so far as to call her a, quote, terrorist, unquote, for her shocking views. One user wrote, quote, "She's basically saying mass shootings are inevitable and now a way of life. This lady's broken," unquote. While another replied, quote, "I hope someone tells her that murder is not legal," unquote. Quote, "I don't know what she's talking about, and neither does she," unquote, another tweeted, as a fourth person begged, quote, "Oh my God, will someone please lock her up in a padded room," unquote. Yeah, padded room, and throw the fucking key away. The thing is that she takes things that's happened, and instead of telling the story in a factual manner, she twists it to fit her narrative, to fit her point of view, okay? She does that all the time. And to say that, oh, well, if they won't use a gun to kill people, they'll use a rock, they'll make a bomb, they'll use a knife. Yeah, but how often do you hear about a mass killing with someone with a knife? How often do you hear of a mass murder with somebody throwing a rock, or rocks, plural, okay? Okay, how often do you hear that happen? What we're talking about here isn't the method of which they're killing. We're talking about trying to reduce the frequency of them, okay? we always know there's going to be a gun crime in this country. We can't really undo that. There's too many guns out there as it is, and there's no fucking way on God's green earth that we could possibly go out and confiscate every single one. Okay, these people will hide that shit. You'll never find them all, and they'll always get access to it, either from inside the country or outside and bringing it. You know what I'm saying? Mexico is a good example. The gun crimes they have in that country, the guns don't come from Mexico, they come from us. Okay? They got people in America that's smuggling our guns across the border into Mexico. Okay? They don't really sell guns down there in that country. Believe it or not. Okay, they don't really sell guns down there because of their gun policies, but they get the guns from us. We're sending them the guns that's causing all the havoc in that country over there. So they have a gun problem too, but it's the gangs that have it all the shit. So it's gang wars and over drugs and shit, which is instigating that, not just random killings like we have here in this country with guns. So they got a problem, we got a problem, and the common denominator is guns. Fucking guns. The other denominators she would like to squeeze under that thing aren't really there. We don't calculate death rates from crime by who got knifed to death or who got hit by a rock and died, or somebody making a homemade bomb. Stuff like the bomb that comes from people like Ted Kaczynski or somebody like that. And how often does that happen? Okay, that's a Homeland Security issue there. And that usually is from people that are, they're really not involved in our government. They just want to see it end. Okay, I guess you could argue the same thing for the maggots out there that, hate our country. But, before maggots was even a thing, it was people like Kaczynski and, the Unabomber and all them people. It was people like that who just didn't like this country or like anything about it that were doing it, okay? And the people that they killed, it wasn't something that happened every single day like it does in this country with guns. Okay, every day we're getting reports of somebody or some people being gunned down and they have no connection to the shooter. Okay, it used to be that if somebody was shot, there was a story that went with that, okay? That the person shot knew the person that shot him or her. It's usually was like that. At least that's the way it was. Even the serial killers had a reason to go after certain people that they were killing. It might have been a sick sexual thing, but it was something. It was a reason, okay? Like, with Ted Bundy, it was a certain woman look, or something that set him off, okay? And that's what he picked up. There was always a reason, okay? Today, the shootings there is no reason. It's like, I see you, you're dead, okay? I see that one, she's dead. Wherever my barrel is aimed, I'm gonna pull the trigger. Whoever's standing in between the bullet and whatever, you're dead. No connection at all. It's just a person unleashing their frustration and taking as many people as they can before they themselves get shot. And believe me, they don't care if they get shot. That's the whole reason why they're doing what they're doing, because they know they're going to get shot, or they hope they will. It's like suicide by gun, but they want to take as many people with them on the suicide as they can. Okay? Where they got that idea, I never saw a movie where anybody did something like that, because even in a movie, if you got a character that's going around killing people, the writer's got to put some kind of reason in there, for why they do it. I mean, even in a movie like, Silence of the Lambs, the killer has got a reason why he's killing, trying to make a bodysuit for, a woman suit for himself, okay? It's a sick reason, but there's a reason. But who could write a story about a guy that just aimlessly goes around shooting people and has no motive, except that he's just pissed at him, whatever happened to him at work or whatever, he just woke up off the wrong side of the bed, How is that going to be, accepted by a person that took the time to buy and read a book, So we have this problem of guns, of people using them in all the wrong ways. All right. And that's the problem that we're trying to reduce. But because Marjorie Taylor Greene is probably friendly with the gun lobby side of things, she's going to come out and throw as much smoke into that argument as she can to obscure the truth, and which is what she's trying to do here by throwing in these other methods of killing somebody, okay, which happen, but not very often. You hardly ever hear about it. You'd probably have to Google search it to find a story where somebody was killed by a rock, okay, and it probably didn't happen just now yesterday. It probably happened a long time ago, but the truth is that it's very infrequent. And that's almost like an act of nature sometimes to have that happen. But what Marjorie Taylor's doing here is just plain up, you know, blowing smoke up her ass, basically. She's trying to cloud the issue. She's trying to keep the arguing going about gun control, keeping it against it, making the people who own guns afraid that somebody's going to come and take them, even though nobody ever said they were going to, which I wish they would, because if it was me as president, that would be the first thing I'd do, is send people out there to confiscate guns. Okay, whether the fuck they like it or not, I wouldn't care what the Supreme Court said about it. Okay, the problem is at the point where we have to take drastic steps to stop it. Okay, it's the body count has gone into astronomical numbers. And we have people down here who just would rather ignore it, okay, than actually look at that and say, yes, we got to do something about that. There was a time in this country where people were like, and Americans were like folks living in a community where they helped each other, okay? And when something was wrong, the community would pull together to try to correct the problem. They didn't always rely on the police to do everything for them. They would take care of the issue themselves. There was a time that was like that long ago. Today, it's every man for himself, and I can see why. You know, because you got a bad financial problem in our country. You got joblessness. You know, you got people that are destitute. You got people with bills up the ass. You got people shooting each other out there. It all looks hopeless. It really does look hopeless out there as far as the possibility that we can turn everything around. All right, and other countries are shaking their head at us that we don't see the solution right in front of our face, and that's, you know, the guns, because all these other countries have already taken steps to take and correct their problem by enacting some strict gun laws. They wouldn't fly in this country because of the NRA and the gun lobby. That would never happen over here, but it's happened over there, and the results are evident. They have very few gun crimes in those countries. But over here, I mean, we are number one. Well, number two, actually. Number one is, I can't remember what country it is, but we're number two in the world for the most gun crimes. And, you know, that's not something that we should champion around with a fucking badge and say, oh, look what we did. Okay, that's like, you know, who can get to the bottom of the barrel the quickest, you know. And as far as I know, we got just one more country to one up, and we're getting pretty good. We've had more killings already in this country than days that we've been in 2023. Okay, and that's pretty sad. That's like, you know, maybe like 2 mass killings a day practically. But the thing is we really need to shut up people like her, because when we're all having a logical discussion between us about honestly how are we going to stop this problem and what we need to do. Okay, the last thing we need to hear is somebody over in the corner over there screaming, "You're a fucking liar! You don't know what you're talking about!" You know, we don't need somebody like that who's just there to instigate a fight. They bring nothing to the fucking table except chaos. That's what she is. She's just a mouth in the background who's just there to throw her darts at whatever the hell's in front of her. Why? You know, who knows? I really would hate to really know, to be honest, because I couldn't stand to be in front of her for 5 minutes listening to her talk. And, you know, how anybody else in Washington, D.C. can put up with her is beyond me. I mean, it's at this point, she's been around too fucking long in in Washington. She needs to get out. They need to vote her out and put some sanity back into Georgia there. She's an embarrassment to that fucking state. I don't know if they realize that or not, but she doesn't make Georgia look very good. So let's have a commercial break. We'll be right back.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
I'm Alex Curtis. I'm a lobsterman in Maine, and this is me.
I'm Ruth McLaughlin, and this is me.
I'm Eric Hopkins. I'm an artist, and this is me.
This is me.
Me. This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
At the end of the journey, the main thing is you, original.
We know how people in power and conservatives use culture wars in order to distract and diffuse us from challenging institutions of power, right? And I want to talk about how the attacks on trans and LGBT people factor into this. The first time I was ever hit on by a grown man, I was about 13 or 14 years old. I still had braces in my teeth. And if you ask a lot of women about the first time that they had encountered something like that, they will often say 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. When I was in my early 20s and I worked as a waitress on an outdoor cafe, there was a man that would park on the side of the street, and we realized that he was pleasuring himself to the waitresses that were going back and forth on the sidewalk. I can't tell you how many stories I and almost every woman I know have about things like this. And when you actually look at who's committing this abuse, it's majority straight men. Many of these disgusting and insinuating attacks on trans and LGBT people are actually projections of what predatory, cisgender, and often straight men do when left alone in the presence of women, or sometimes horribly, children. So instead of getting you to challenge the patriarchy, they're trying to get you to challenge the very gender expressiveness that challenges patriarchy. Don't get it twisted, because a lot of people attacking drag are projecting.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it. It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
Along with what's going on there with Marjorie Taylor Greene, you got President Biden having to deal with Kevin McCarthy, okay, who is really, you know, I guess we would call what McCarthy is doing here as terrorist activity, okay? And I'll get into that here in a second, but let me read this article from CNBC, written by Emma Kearney. Biden slams McCarthy, tells him to take default off the table and debt ceiling fight. President Biden on Wednesday slammed House Republicans for flirting with defaulting on the national debt, saying America is not a, quote, deadbeat nation, unquote. He also went as far as quoting Republican former presidents Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump to stress the catastrophe it would cause. Quote, no one should do anything to jeopardize the full faith and credit of the United States of America, unquote, Biden said. Quote, take default off the table and let's have a real serious detailed conversation about how to grow the economy, lower costs, and reduce the deficit, unquote. Biden called the gambit by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, quote, really dangerous, unquote. Quote, MAGA Republicans in Congress are threatening to default on the national debt, the debt that took 230 years to accumulate overall, unless we do what they say, unquote, Biden said. Quote, they say they're going to default unless I agree to all these wacko notions they have. Default. We'd be worse than totally irresponsible, unquote. Speaking at the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 77 in Accokeek, Maryland, I guess that's how you say it, he then compared the McCarthy's plan to the words of other conservative leaders who opposed the move. Quote, the speaker likes to quote his hero Ronald Reagan, who I knew when I was a senator, but he doesn't quote everything Reagan said, unquote, Biden said. Quote, Reagan said, debt ceiling brinksmanship threatens the holders of government bonds and those who rely on Social Security and veterans benefits. The United States has a special responsibility to itself and the world to meet its obligation, unquote. Biden went on to quote his predecessor, Trump, who expressed disbelief that anyone would use the debt ceiling in political negotiations. Quote, I guess he didn't know the new MAGA Republicans he bred, unquote, Biden quipped. Quote, America is not a deadbeat nation. We met our obligations, and I made it clear to Speaker McCarthy how we should proceed to settle our differences, unquote. The president repeatedly chided McCarthy for giving speeches like his one to Wall Street earlier this week without offering a clear plan to move forward. Biden released his budget proposal last month and has asked House Republicans to do so as well. Quote, MAGA Republicans owe the people the same. Offer a plan, not speeches, unquote, Biden said. Quote, offer a budget that levels to the American people exactly what you intend to do, what you're going to cut, what tax giveaways you plan to extend to the super wealthy, what it means for the deficit, unquote. As Biden was speaking, McCarthy announced his plan in his own speech on the House floor. McCarthy's bill calls to lift the debt limit by $1.5 trillion or until March 31st of 2024, slash federal spending by up to $130 billion, limit spending increases to 1% a year, and set fiscal year 2024 spending levels at that of fiscal year 2022. McCarthy's office said it would result in $4.5 trillion in savings. Speaking before the bill was released, Biden referenced a leading Republican proposal that called for a 22% cut in discretionary spending. Quote, here's the thing. Do these painful costs actually help the deficit? Do they actually reduce costs? Well, the honest answer is no, unquote, the president said. Biden said the proposal cuts would hurt Americans more than it would help. Quote, folks, that's the MAGA economic agenda. Spending cuts for working and middle-class folks, Americans, and tax cuts for those at the top of the pile, unquote, he said. Quote, it's not about fiscal discipline. It's about cutting benefits for folks they don't seem to care much about. It's about finding ways to squeeze out more of America's middle class, unquote. Yeah, and to give what they squeeze out of us to the people at the top, okay? Because the top never wants to pay their taxes, ever. The people who could pay who have more than enough money to pay and still plenty of money to live fat, high off the hog as they ever were, they don't want to pay. They don't want to contribute a thin dime to this country. Okay? It's sad. They want to consider themselves Americans. They want to enjoy the benefits of being a citizen of this country, but they don't want to contribute in any shape, way, or form to how the country works. They don't seem to care about the fact that there's a number of things that we have in America that are supposed to be there to help people through tough times. They don't seem to care that that system's in place, and they don't want to contribute to it, which means they don't care about people in America if they fall on hard times. Or like, you know, right now what's going on in Florida with the gas shortage down there right now, okay? They don't want to dirty their hands with any of that. And you find very few people who are wealthy that actually take the extra mile to try to do something to help, okay? Very few people. You don't see it often, okay? What comes to mind right off the bat is like Kevin Costner when that oil thing happening in the Gulf area, when that damn rig blew up or something. He was there trying to help out in some way, okay? Very rare to see anything like that happen. Most of the time, the rich people are in the background, okay? And they just talk about it. And they don't make a move to do anything about it. And especially the ones who are involved in the oil industry. They're more concerned about what they're going to lose in profit over what they could lose in lives and the environment, which lasts a whole lot longer than money, okay? The money comes and goes all the time in the scheme of things around the world. But when it comes to losing the environment, it takes forever to recover that. Even to this day, the damage from what happened that year, it's still there. It's still, you could still see it. Maybe not from the air so much, but it's coming into the shorelines with sick fish and all this crap. It decimated the fishing industry down there. All right, New Orleans isn't what it used to be anymore because of that. They killed that whole area. That's sad because it used to be a hopping town before that, and people would go there all the time. But now half of New Orleans is basically a wasteland because of that fucking shit that went on with the oil, and plus when the levee broke, you know, and wiped out a lot. You know, it just, you know what I'm saying? A lot of things have happened to that area down there. Okay, but like I said, it's as much their country as it is ours, and for them to find illegal ways of not paying their taxes, Donald Trump, okay, and to find ways to avoid being honest, so that way they can get breaks on any taxes they might have to pay, like increasing the value of something you own really high for when you want returns and really low when you don't want to give. Okay, it's games like that they play, and unfortunately we don't have a very good system of monitoring shit like that, because we only find out until they unzip their fly that they've done something wrong that gets the IRS's interest, and we start digging into their past, and before you know it, we're finding all kinds of fucking mishaps and all kinds of crap that they were doing. And in the case of Donald Trump, they have so much shit on him that he's been doing illegally throughout his life practically, that it would take years and years and years and years of litigation to make him answerable to anything, and it would just go on for God knows how long, okay? It would be better to just take the whole kit and caboodle and lump it all into one big charge and just throw him his ass in prison and throw away the key for the rest of however long he's got living on this earth, okay? It would just take up too much money in taxes and stuff like that to prosecute this fucker, We have all the evidence we need to know that he's done wrong. Just lock him up, okay? History will make its judgment on him anyway. But the thing is that McCarthy coming to Biden and making a threat on him that we're going to crash the economy if you don't agree to what we want, that's just out and out terrorism, terrorist activity. That's what a terrorist does, okay? It's my way or the highway, and the highway means destitution for you, or total collapse of your country. Well, here's the truth of it. Threatening the destruction of our economy is also threatening the destruction of everybody living in this country and their economy, their individual economies, and all the countries that our monies connect to around the world. Don't think it's not going to hurt other countries that do business with us if our fucking money just all of a sudden is useless. Other countries are going to hold us accountable to getting their money back, and believe me, they're not going to be happy about it, because their countries are going to hurt too. So the Republicans, or McCarthy here, by being a bully as he's not really thinking very well on what kind of misery this is going to cause even to the elite in this country. Okay, it's going to affect them just as much as us. They might have more money to survive it for a while, but eventually their money's going to be worthless, and they're not going to have anything left. And do you think those people are going to sit by and let that happen? Do you think they're going to let McCarthy go through with his threat and default the country? Well, I mean, we've come to this point before where the right wing threatens a default, okay? And they usually would, an agreement would be made, just an hour before the default would come into place. We've already gone past that right now, okay? We've already come past that. And at any time right now, our country could be crippled by a default. That's what Americans don't know right now. They're not really telling you this on the news, but we've already gone past the point, the deadline, as it were. And right now, the Congress, the budget office and everything, they're juggling around monies as we go here to pay for things, okay? But right now, we don't have a budget, okay? They haven't agreed on anything. We're just throwing money around to make sure that things are still going, but we can't keep doing that because, we don't have the debt ceiling raised. We can't, we put out more credit, as it were, for things. And believe me, the other countries are waiting with bated breath to see what happens, because this is going to affect them as much as us. Maybe not as bad, but it's going to affect them and their stability in their economy. And nobody right now wants to have instability in the economy because we're still recovering from the fucking pandemic. Okay? Supplies are still short. The traversal of the supplies around the globe is not as good as it was. Okay, we got shortages in places. Things aren't getting around as fast. And it's keeping our economy, staggering. It's not really strong yet. Okay? And we shouldn't be talking about default or making cuts in anything until we get the country stabilized. Those discussions can come later, but right now is not the time to do that. Biden has managed to keep the country from completely crashing, which is what we were facing after Trump lost the election. Okay, he's been trying to keep that from happening, which he's done. Okay, but there's still a long way to go here in order to shore up our economy and get it back on its feet, as it was before the pandemic. Okay, so we still have that problem, and the Republicans don't seem to care, or they're using the fact that our country is still staggering to add more emphasis to the threat. Okay, that we're going to cause the economy to crash, and you can't stop it. Okay, you won't be able to stop it if you don't give us what we want, which I'm sure is not going to be of any interest to us in the long run, and it's not going to help the economy in the long run either. Okay, it's what you got is all these fat cats trying to take what they can when they can, as quickly as they can, because they themselves know our economy isn't that strong right now. That's staggering around. So what do people do when their home is on fire? Okay, they run in the house and they grab all the valuables they can and save what they can before the house burns right to the ground. That's kind of like what's going on right now. The Republicans are in the house grabbing everything they can from us while the fucking house is burning down around them. The United States is burning down around us, people. Okay, Biden's trying to put the fire out, but everybody that could help to put it out is all grabbing everything they can and running the fuck out of the house. Okay, that's what's going on here, folks. And McCarthy, he's just the fucking mouthpiece to the Republican Party as a whole, all the fat cats, rather, as a whole, for what they're doing. So they're basically holding Biden hostage, basically. They got him cornered. They got a leverage under him, and they're not going to play nice, okay? It's their way or the highway, basically, because they're afraid that, you know, I mean, he went to Wall Street, gave them a speech, okay? Offered them nothing, but told them all kinds of nice things, okay? Don't think for 1 minute they didn't realize that he came there with nothing, and they got nothing out of the fucking speech that he gave. That didn't help their nerves any in Wall Street. They know that there's trouble on the horizon, okay? That's why they're trying to grab what they can, trying to take it from us, get whatever money's out there and grab it, you know? But like I said, if they crash the economy, all the shit they grab ain't gonna be worth nothing at the end of the day, because it's just not, you know, the dollar cannot withstand. I mean, what is it? The dollar's worth what, 80 cents, you know, right now? Something like that, I guess. I don't know, it could be off, but it's not, it's low. It's lower than it's been, but our money's sinking, and it's gonna, and it'll really drop if we default. Your dollar, whatever you got in your wallet's gonna be nothing but paper to burn, because it ain't gonna be worth a damn thing. So, like I said, this is a time where you have to look at what the maggots are doing in McCarthy and say, you guys are terrorists. And what do we do in this country with terrorists? We don't negotiate with terrorists. So you either come to the table as a politician, an American politician, and discuss this amicably, or you're going to find yourself sitting out in the hall, okay, surrounded by Homeland Security guards. Okay, that's up to you. You want to be treated like a terrorist? We'll treat you like one. But if you want to do something to help the country get through, so we don't default, then, you know, the door's open to you. Come in here and talk. But we don't want any ultimatums here. We don't deal with people like that. Ever. All right, and so lastly, about the abortion pill, there's a story here that was just published here 4 hours ago from NBC News, which is by Zoe Richards and Julie Sirkin, entitled, Democrats Breathe a Temporary Sigh of Relief After Supreme Court Order on Abortion Pill. Democrats expressed cautious optimism and Republicans voiced frustration Friday night after the Supreme Court allowed the abortion pill mifepristone to remain widely available. The court blocked a decision that had thrown nationwide access to abortion medication into jeopardy earlier this month, but in doing so, sent the case back to an appeals court. With the legal battle set to resume there next month, Democrats on Friday highlighted the fight that lies ahead. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who led congressional Democrats in filing an amicus brief aimed at keeping the original ruling from taking effect, tweeted, quote, "The fight continues and we won't back down," unquote. Senate Patty Murray, a Democrat from Washington, offered similar sentiments on Twitter, calling the Supreme Court's actions good news while cautioning that, quote, "This fight is far from over," unquote. Murray, a member of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, had blasted Republicans earlier this week over a measure that sought to stop abortion services provided by the Department of Veterans Affairs. The GOP failed to advance in a procedural vote Wednesday. Senator Tammy Duckworth, a Democrat from Illinois who had joined Murray in condemning the Republican measure, commented on Friday's order saying that, quote, "Anything short of a preserving access," unquote, to the FDA-approved drug would set a, quote, "dangerous new precedent where one rogue judge could strip away access to a safe and effective medication for millions of Americans," unquote. Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat from Connecticut, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee who reintroduced legislation in March to codify abortion rights after it failed to pass the Senate last year, was cautiously optimistic about the court's order. Quote, "We can exhale for now. Across the medication, abortion remains illegal legal, but the danger to women's health care is unabated, unquote, he tweeted. On the other side of the aisle, some Republicans cast doubt on the safety of the drug mifepristone, suggesting it contained, quote unquote, real risks. Quote, I will continue to do everything in my ability to protect women, girls, and unborn children from the real risks of DIY chemical abortion pills, unquote, said Senator James Lankford, Republican from Oklahoma. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, Republican from Mississippi, said on Twitter that, quote, we will continue the fight as the case continues to hold the U.S. FDA accountable for endangering moms and babies through chemical abortion drugs, unquote. Representative Michelle Fischbach, Republican from Minnesota, co-chair of the House Pro-Life Caucus, also framed her frustration as a concern over women's safety. Quote, the abortion pill can cause complications and adverse events. This is widely known. We need to protect women and girls from the dangers of this drug, unquote, Fischbach wrote on Twitter. Senator Steve Daines, Republican from Montana, chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, called the Supreme Court's decision, quote, a setback in the fight for life, unquote. Quote, but I will continue working to protect babies and moms from the danger of tragedy of DIV abortion drugs, unquote, Daines tweeted. The top Republicans in each chamber, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, did not issue statements on Friday night. Their offices did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Yeah, I will in a second. Hold on. Now, where was I? The top Republicans in each chamber, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, did not issue statements on Friday night. Their offices did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Congressional Republicans have struggled to coalesce around a unified message on abortion after electoral defeats in the wake of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade last year. The same challenges are also affecting GOP presidential hopefuls, many of whom haven't solidified their positions on abortion bans and access to medications like mifepristone. The Biden administration, which filed a request in a federal appeals court last week to block the ruling, welcomed the Supreme Court's order, with the president saying Cashmark's decision, quote, would have undermined FDA's medical judgment and put women's health at risk, unquote. Quote, I will continue to fight politically driven attacks on women's health, but let's be clear, the American people must continue to use their vote as their voice and elect a Congress who will pass a law restoring the protections of Roe v. Wade, unquote, Biden said in a statement. Vice President Kamala Harris, who has served as the White House's top messenger amid the legal battle over the abortion drug, called mifepristone, quote, essential medication, unquote, and said the administration was committed to, quote, defending the FDA's ability to approve safe and effective drugs, unquote. Okay, so Biden is right. It really is up to us as voters to put a Congress in there that does what we need it to do. If the majority of this country is all against what's going on here with this mifepristone thing, then obviously the wrong people are in government because they're not representing the majority. They're only representing their personal beliefs and the minority in this country that don't give a shit. Okay, essentially about women's health. Why they like that? I don't know. What do they got against women anyway? But the fact is that the FDA approved this drug decades ago. Okay, mifepristone. It's been used millions of times already. How can anybody now, after all this time, say, "Oh, it's dangerous. You can't use it"? You know, and that argument seems to hold weight with people on the Republican aisle. I mean, these people aren't even doctors. How the fuck do they know anything about what mifepristone is being safe or not? How can they argue against all that? Doesn't the FDA trump anything they say about that? Okay. It's already been tested, it's already been debated, and it was approved at the end of the day. This is like going back to Roe v. Wade and undoing it, all that. We went through the debate. We went through the discussions. We went through the vote, and it went to the courts, and we had Roe v. Wade. 30 years later, now we're having this argument all over again because they couldn't accept it then, and they're going to fight until they get their way. And they got their way. They overturned it. Okay? But for years, that was the precedent in this country. Women had the right to have an abortion. Okay? Now all of a sudden, no, we're not going to have that anymore. Okay? Why? What do you think's going to happen if you take it away from women? Do these people even remember what it was like in this country before they had Roe v. Wade? What women were doing when they didn't want, to have a child or something? Do they remember what that was like? Because I know there's enough people there old enough who do remember. Okay? And those are the ones that need to come out and start yakking about what it was like back then. Okay? That fight may have been a while back, but it wasn't so far back that there aren't people who still remember what it was like, to this day. Okay, they're still around and they remember. And those people should be the ones out there slapping some sense back into these bastards in there that are sitting here telling you that, oh, they were wrong all the way back then, okay? Because they're hoping that the younger generations don't remember and they're going to agree with them, okay? Because they never saw what happened. And I doubt, and I remember when I was in school, there was not much talk about, how bad it was before Roe v. Wade. In history class, okay? I remember that subject there wasn't really talked about much. It was just kind of glossed over that, yes, Roe v. Wade happened, and this was Roe, this was Wade, and that was it. But they didn't really tell you about why it had to come to that. What was going on in society that made it such a thing that the Supreme Court had to hear about this case, okay? Because usually, if it got that far, the discussion, that it was serious. The Supreme Court picks the fucking cases it wants to hear. It doesn't get a chance to hear every case. Okay? They got thousands of fucking requests all over this country to hear things. Okay? They can't do them all. So they picked that one because it was an important thing. The whole country was involved in this. So it had to be heard by the Supreme Court. And it was a political issue as well. Like it is today. But at that time, Republicans weren't so hell-bent on getting their way on that, okay? Because at the time, abortion wasn't something that they really disagreed with in their party. That didn't come till after, when they found out how much support that issue was getting and how much money was coming their way from these religious cults, I like to call them, who wanted to see that ban, okay? So it was only then he said, hey, we can use this issue when we run for office and stuff, get people's money, and we can outspend the Democrats. That's how they connected the dots there. But this is what's going on here, okay? They're taking this pill that was already approved years and years and years ago by the FDA as being safe, and which has been used many times in many hospitals by many doctors, and they all have a good track record with it, okay? Nobody has said in any way, shape, or form that this pill causes any problem at all, okay, to the person getting that medication, okay? And if there was, it was a very few in between, and it might have been because of a pre-existing condition that caused it. But that's it. It's like the vaccine that we were all supposed to take for the pandemic, okay? Same people bitching about, we don't need the vaccine, bitching about this now. Mifepristone. They were as wrong about the vaccine then as they are over this. How many times are we going to let them keep pulling us by the nose hairs to making one mistake after another which costs people's lives? Okay? How long are we going to sit back and allow that to go on? Because frankly, the land that we stand on is getting thinner and thinner because we got a whole lot more graves being dug around us here from people that have been following the example of the maggots and are getting themselves killed in the result. All right? They're probably killing more fucking people in their party than the guns are right now at this point, because every day there's still people in hospitals that are suffering with COVID-19 and dying from it because they probably didn't take the vaccine, or they weren't wearing the mask, or they were just being irresponsible or something and got sick. okay? And they'll go down dying saying, no, Trump said it was a hoax, okay? There's still people out there saying that. And they're still going to, you know, they're still going places where the virus is still heavily active, okay? There's still spots in America where the virus is still out there, okay? It hasn't totally gone away. It probably never will. We got to get vaccinated for that every year, apparently, or maybe more. Who knows? But it's a thing that mutates, like the flu virus does. And so, but before all this time, you had the right wing out there following Trump's lead and him telling us all these bullshit stories and pretending, okay, like it doesn't exist, because he couldn't help anything about it. He didn't have a plan, okay, how to help us. So if he didn't have a plan, the best thing to do was just to label it a conspiracy theory, or it's just a hoax, because he had no idea how to fight this thing. He's trying to save himself, basically. Didn't work though, did it? We found out pretty quick what was going on. It's just a lot of people that support him have a very hard time to swallow it as fact, okay? All right, so anyway, that's all I want to talk about here for today's show, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the week and the upcoming work week. And please subscribe and comment. I'd like to hear your opinions and your feedback here on things I've discussed. And please keep your ears open to news about COVID. It's still out there, as I said, and you should get ready to protect yourself from it. And I hope everybody will treat each other nice, and no fighting, especially what's going on with Florida. I know gas shortages create panics down there. Okay, but please remember that you're all in the same boat down there, and you all have reasons to need gas, but there isn't enough to go around, okay? And some of you aren't going to get some of you will, but, you know, the best thing to do is try to understand that you're all in this together, and it's only through togetherness that you're going to be able to get through it. Fighting each other and all that, it gets nobody nowhere except maybe injured or even killed, you know, depending on how bad it gets. So we don't want that. So take care, everybody. I will talk to you later. Bye.